Broomfield, Colorado, December 14th. A mother stands in front of a heavy garage door. She's calling for her daughter, Crystal. The house is too quiet. The air feels heavy. In a few seconds, this woman will lift that door and walk into a nightmare that was 4 months in the making. She will find her 43-year-old daughter, Crystal Krug, lying on the cold concrete. There is blood on the wall. There is a wound that looks like a fall, but hides a much darker secret. While Crystal's mother is screaming for help, her husband, Daniel Krug, is starting a normal workday. He's a man of logic, a man of data, an analyst. And for the last 120 days, Daniel has been engineering the most calculated, high-stakes homicide plot the state of Colorado has ever seen. He didn't just kill his wife, he built a ghost to do it. He created fake identities, he manipulated his own children. He set up a perfect scapegoat, a man Crystal hadn't seen in 20 years. He believed his plan was bulletproof. He believed the police would spend months chasing a phantom, while he stood in the center of the wreckage, playing the role of the grieving, terrified victim. And for a while, it worked exactly the way he intended. Welcome to True Gruesome Crime Stories. Today we are deconstructing a case that redefines the term premeditated. Most murders are moments of heat, explosions of anger or greed. But the killing of Crystal Krug was a slow-burn architectural project. It was a masterpiece of psychological warfare. In this video, we aren't just looking at a crime. We are looking at the digital fingerprints of a man who thought he was the smartest person in every room. We'll dive into the secret history of Daniel Krug, a history that includes a practice run years earlier that the police missed. We'll analyze the interrogation tapes where the mask finally slips. We'll show you how a single Visa gift card and a strip of blue painter's tape brought down a genius. By the end of this story, you'll understand that the most dangerous person in your life isn't the stranger in the bushes. It's the person who knows your passwords, your fears, and exactly what time you'll be pulling into the garage. Stay with us. This is the full, expanded story of how Colorado's smartest killer was finally caught. To understand the end, we have to look at the beginning. Daniel and Crystal Krug looked like the American dream. They were well-educated, successful, and lived in a beautiful home with their 3 children. Crystal was described as vibrant, a dedicated mother, and the glue that held the family together. Daniel was the logical one, an IT professional and analyst who dealt in systems and predictable outcomes. But systems can be manipulated. Behind the closed doors of their Broomfield home, the marriage was crumbling. It wasn't explosive. It was a rough patch that had turned into a permanent Cold War. Crystal wanted out. Daniel didn't. In the mind of an analyst like Daniel, a divorce wasn't just a social failure. It was a loss of control. And Daniel Krug was a man who needed to control the narrative. He didn't want a divorce. He wanted a fix. But his version of a fix wasn't therapy or communication. It was the creation of a common enemy. He believed that if he and Crystal were under attack, they would be forced back together. This is where the architect began his first draft. September, 3 months before the murder. The first move wasn't a threat. It was a break-in. Daniel calls the police to report a suspicious incident. He tells Officer Johnson that he saw a man jump over his gate and flee. He sounds concerned, but measured. He's the protective husband in training. But look at the details. Daniel tells the officer that nothing valuable was taken, except for a spare house key kept in the garage. Why a key? Because a missing key creates a permanent open loop in the victim's mind. It means the intruder can come back whenever they want. It means the house is no longer a sanctuary. This was step 1. Daniel didn't lose the key. He stole it from his own family to plant the seeds of fear. He wanted the police on record. He wanted a paper trail of a mysterious stranger invading their space long before he ever intended to strike. The police advised him to change the locks. Daniel agreed, but the psychological lock on Crystal's peace of mind had already been picked. As October rolled in, the enemy finally got a name.
Crystal starts receiving messages. They aren't from a stranger, they are from her past, Anthony Holland. Anthony was a man Crystal dated briefly as a teenager. 20 years had passed. They hadn't spoken in half a decade. But suddenly, Anthony is everywhere. The messages start innocent, if you can call it that. "Hi, Crystal, it's Anthony. I'm in Boulder every few weeks. Thought we could hook up. You game?" Crystal ignores it. She's a grown woman, a mother, a professional. She assumes it's a ghost from the past reaching out in a moment of loneliness. But then the messages turn dark. They turn personal. "You should say yes when I offer pity. I saw your pics. You got fat. Saw you at the dentist today. Your license plate is expired." Think about the psychological impact of that message. To Crystal, this meant Anthony wasn't just texting from a distance. He was there. He was at the dentist. He was looking at her car. In reality, Daniel was the one at the dentist. Daniel was the one who saw the license plate. He was taking the mundane details of their shared life and weaponizing them through the persona of Anthony. By late October, Crystal is living in a state of hypervigilance. She's not sleeping. She's installed dash cams. She's carrying a concealed handgun. She even starts a spreadsheet. Imagine the level of terror required to keep a stalker log. Every text, every ping from a burner phone, every suspicious car. Crystal was documenting her own descent into fear. And Daniel, he was playing the supportive partner. He was the one helping her look for GPS trackers on her car. He was the one, quote, buying extra security cameras. On Halloween night, the escalation reached a fever pitch. Crystal received an email with a photo attached. The message said, "Your husband drives like a slow old lady. He needs to drive safe." This was Daniel's masterstroke. By sending a photo of himself being watched, he removed himself from the list of suspects. After all, why would a husband stalk himself? It convinced Crystal that the danger was external. It convinced her that her family was the target, and she was the reason. The guilt was as heavy as the fear. Crystal wasn't just a victim, she was a fighter. She hired a private investigator. She went to the Broomfield police. She sat down with Detective Andrew Martinez. In the tapes, you see a woman who is exhausted but articulate. She gives Martinez everything: the messages, the PI's report on Anthony Holland, the timeline of the break-in. Martinez is a seasoned pro. He sees the red flags, but he sees them pointing at Anthony. The PI's report shows Anthony has multiple addresses and phone lines. He looks like a drifter. He looks like a man who could easily disappear into the shadows of the digital world. Martinez starts the process. He sends out warrants for phone records and email logs. But here is where the system failed Crystal. The tech companies didn't move fast enough. They treated it as a stalking case, harassment, not a life or death emergency. If Martinez had received those records in November, he would have seen that the Anthony emails were coming from an IP address inside Daniel Krug's office building. But the data sat in a queue, and Daniel Krug knew how to work a queue. One of the most disturbing aspects of this case isn't what Daniel did to Crystal, it's what he did to his children. As the stalking intensified, Daniel began a campaign of gaslighting by proxy. He didn't just tell Crystal she was being watched, he told the children that her mother was acting weird. He created a narrative where Crystal was the unstable one. He hinted to the children that she might be involved with this mysterious man from her past. Why? Because Daniel was building an alibi of character. If the police ever looked at him, he wanted his children, the most honest witnesses, to say, "Dad was the one trying to protect us. Mom was the one who was acting suspicious." He was weaponizing their children's love to bury his own tracks. It is a level of premeditation that moves beyond murderer and into the realm of sociopath. Early December. Crystal receives a message that feels like a miracle. "I can't visit you anymore. No more Colorado time. My girlfriend doesn't want us talking." This is a classic hunter's tactic, the false retreat. Daniel knew that if Crystal remained hyper-vigilant, she would be too hard to catch. He needed her to put the gun down. He needed her to stop checking the cameras. He needed her to breathe. So he sent Anthony away. For a few days, the Krug household felt normal. They talked about Christmas. They planned for the kids' school events. Crystal let her guard down. The day of the murder was planned with the precision of a software launch. 8 a.m., Crystal drops the kids at school. 8:10 a.m., she pulls back into the driveway. At 8:15 a.m., the entire home security system goes dark. Every camera, every sensor, except for one. Daniel Krug, the IT expert, had used his admin access to shut down the Google Nest system. He knew that if the cameras were off, there would be no event recorded. But he made a mistake, a genius mistake. He left the camera pointed at the outside of the garage active. Why? Perhaps he thought it would capture Anthony arriving, or perhaps he just forgot. Between 8:15 a.m. and 10:15 a.m., Crystal Krug was murdered in her own garage. She was struck in the head, she was stabbed in the chest. She never even had time to reach for the handgun in her purse. Daniel then did something chilling. He went to work. Daniel arrives at his office by 9 a.m. He greets coworkers, he checks emails, he acts like a man with a heavy heart but a clear conscience. Then he starts the concerned husband routine. He calls Crystal, she doesn't answer. He texts her, no response. He calls the police dispatch. Hi, my name is Dan Krug. I don't think this is an emergency, but this feels really weird. My wife isn't responding. We've had threats, a stalker. Listen to his voice.